For my Texas Southern University local paper, I will be interviewing Mother Queen Davison, who grew up in Texas, and I'll be asking her questions about growing up in Texas during the Civil Rights era. Okay. So, Mother Queen, when and where were you born?
I was born in Houston County, 1937.
Okay. And is your family from that area?
They're from that area.
Do you know when they came down to Texas, or have they always been in Texas?
So far, they've always been in Texas, always.
Okay. So what do you remember about your childhood?
I remember my childhood as growing up. They were people that worked on the farm.
Mm-hmm.
We chopped cotton, picked cotton, pulled cotton, all of that, and the people back in that day, we were very poor. And they would come and pick us up on this truck, and we would all be on the back of this truck going to the fields to chop and pick cotton. And sometimes it'd be from 6 in the morning to maybe 6 at night that we would work chopping and picking cotton.
You worked out there too?
Yes.
You got any siblings?
Yes, my sisters and my brothers, we all worked.
How many siblings did you have?
It was 8 of us.
8?
And I was the second to the oldest.
And what did your parents do?
Well, they were farmers too. But I was raised, my parents, my mother and father were not married. So it was just my brother and me. So I grew up under stepfather.
Okay. And did your parents or did your mother and stepfather, did they talk to you about racism and stuff like that?
Racism? Yes, they did. I tell you, on Saturdays, we would go to town. That was our day that we would go to town. And on Saturdays, we would go, they had a store there. I can't think of the name of this store, but the black people would go back to the back of the store, and they had feed sacks. And we would sit on those feed sacks, and that's when they would buy their red sodas, their salami, their cheese, and their crackers, and that's where they would sit and talk for hours. And they have their snuff cans, and when they spit, the snuff cans and all that sitting around the store. They would sit there for hours and just laugh and talk. That was our getaway on the Saturdays. That's what we did on the Saturdays. Go and sit in that store. And it would be different people. That's where we would migrate to the back of the store, and we would sit there and talk and eat and just have fun.
Did your family attend church on Sundays?
Yes, they did.
Okay.
They did. It was a Baptist church that we would go to. But my family weren't really into church. They would go, but they weren't really into church. I think as a kid, I was more into church than them. I was. The Lord dealt with me as a child. When they would be in the house drinking there, they had a whiskey they called Four Roses. They would be in sometimes drinking their whiskey, and I'd be out praising God, singing. I remember at the age of 6 years old, and in the country, you don't have lights and things there, so the stars would light the heavens up. You could sit on the porch and read a book or whatever you want to do. And I remember that I would sit on that porch, and sometimes at night I would just go round and round the house just singing and praising God. And my little dress would be wet in front, from me singing and praising God. The Lord has always dealt with me. My parents really didn't teach me too much about Jesus until I was about 12 or 13 years old. We came into the knowledge of holiness. And that's when I really noticed that my parents, really was interested in church when they got into the holiness church. But prejudice was bad, even at the doctor's office, we had to wait our turns. They had a section for us and a section for the white. and for the water fountain, section for the blacks and section for the white. We had all that going on. Certain parts we couldn't go in. You know, certain things we couldn't do because of our skin color.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And did that ever make you feel some type of way when you were younger, or did you just kind of accept it? Like, how did you feel?
Well, for me, they created a mean streak in me because if they had to be careful how they talked to me because I wouldn't accept it.
Mm-hmm.
Even as a child, you know, for instance, you know, like this man was selling fish one day, and he came up and he stopped, and my mother was going to buy some fish. And you know, they had no respect for you too much. But honey, I put my hands on my little hips where they were supposed to be, and I let him know that that was my mama. You know, he didn't talk to my mama like that. So I always had a mouth. So if they were smart to me, I was smart back with them. But it didn't get me in too much trouble because I was, you know, I was young.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't pay me no mind, but I always had a mouth. Yes, ma'am.
Did you go to school?
Yes, I did.
So how were the schools like? Can you tell me about that? Your schools?
But our school was all black.
Mm-hmm.
It was no white. It was all black. And what about the school that you want to know, baby?
Just like how are your teachers, the experience like being separated? Did you ever want to go to a white school, or did you want to go to a mixed school, or did you like?
Baby, all we knew was black schools.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know about mingling with the whites back there in my time.
Mm-hmm.
It was you know, it was blacks. We had all black schools. Whatever, it was all black. Never was there a mixture of black and white. Mm-mm.
And so did you have any friendships with anyone outside of your race?
No,
No. Okay.
Even you know, like here they have the Mexicans. Like if we saw somebody like that, you know, we were just gauging and just looking, you know, because they were different, you know. But no, we didn't mingle with the outside. They didn't mingle with us. Sure didn't.
So when you were like older, like your teenage years and your young adult life, and you started to see changes and different things, were you like interested in it? Were you active in it? Anything like, you know how, you know, like during the civil rights movement when stuff was starting to change? You get what I'm saying?
No. It didn't bother me
Okay.
that much. It really didn't.
And when you started to have kids, did you talk to them about your past experiences and explain to them stuff that you went through?
Yes, I did. And I explained to them that we were all God's children, regardless to race, creed, or color. And I also taught them what you do for one, do for the other, regardless to what color they are. You know, because we are all God's children. So I didn't teach my children prejudice. I didn't do that. I didn't teach them to be prejudiced.
And now you see on TV, you hear a lot about like the police brutality and how some people feel like it's race related. How do you feel about that, experiencing being segregated and stuff like that? Do you feel like some things are starting to come back around, or what are your views on that if you've been following?
Honey, I feel like some of it is wrong. I really do. I really do. I feel like some of it is just wrong. I feel that the hatred is coming out of the whites on the blacks in certain cities, you know, where now it's beginning to be sort of all over, but mostly like in Alabama, you know, back up in there. I think it's those people have always been prejudiced in those states, and I think it's just wrong. And then too, we can bring some things on ourselves, you know, but I just don't really think that they are just really listening and really trying to get the truth of what really happens or happened, you know, during the time. Just because he's black, you guilty. You know, that's the way I see some of it. And like the man killed in California, you know, the man didn't do a thing. But what did they do? They threw him down and they choked him and all of that, and the poor man died. And he didn't even get a chance to explain himself. But he died. You know, that's wrong. So a lot of it is still brutality. And the whites hating the blacks. You don't see them doing the whites like that. It's mostly blacks that they're doing that too. And I think it's wrong.
All right, well, thank you so much. It was very interesting. Baby. Like, I was like, wow.
Did I do anything to help you out?
You did. Honestly, you gave me so much information, and I was honestly not expecting to hear your stories about working and picking the cotton. I don't want to call you old or anything, but I didn't think all that was still happening in like the 30s, because most people think of that of like 1800s and stuff like that.
No, baby.
So,
chopping cotton, picking cotton, pulling corn and stuff like that. And the way we made the most of our living back there then, we grew gardens and stuff like that. And as children growing up, you know, like kids today, when school was out, we would spend our time in the woods. We would gather the grapes and the wild grapes and the plums and stuff. And that's how my mother, they made jelly. That's where the jelly and stuff come from. Because the kids, we would be out in the woods all day gathering. And they had a nut they call hickory nuts. Do y'all know anything about that? You crack them with an iron. You have an iron and this hammer, and the nut is very, very hard. You have to use a hammer. That's where our nuts came from, was the hickory nuts. And they had these, I believe, the walnuts or whatever, those big nuts. We would crack those. That's where a lot of our nuts came from during the Christmas time.
Oh, okay.
The hickory nuts grew in the country, and we would gather. They are very good. And my father would take the clothesline, you know, the wire from the clothesline, and make the picks where we would pick the nuts out of the hickory nuts.
Thank you again. Thank you so much.